everyone, Norway here. In the last episode, we've tackled about the Chinese mythology. We've learned some of their gods and goddesses, as well as their own versions of myths such as the Pangu, the Panku. Now, enough with the dragons and the Monkey King. Let's travel to another country. Can you guess what it is? Probably, it's Japan! Konnichiwa, minasan! Just a disclaimer, we're not here to study about animes and stuff. This is mythology. We're going to study their lore, divinities, and maybe some of the yokais. Japanese mythology is full of epic tales of adventure with deep reflections of life. It consists of stories derived from old folk beliefs and incorporates elements from Shinto mythology as well as Buddhism. Common themes in Japanese mythology are deities, nature, and royalty. It can be passed down from one generation through the other through both spoken word and written language. The Japanese people call their gods and goddesses as kami, and there are about 8 million of them in Japanese lore. Quite a lot. The Japanese mythology during the ancient times were used to tell the origin of the ruling class, where it further strengthens their authority. And this is based on two main traditions. First is the Yamato cycle, which centers around the sun goddess Amaterasu. Second is the Izumo cycle, which has Asano as the principal character, who is also the brother of Amaterasu. Emperor Jimmy realized that it is important to know the genealogy of all important families in order to establish the position of each in the 8 levels of rank that is based on the Chinese court system, and this resulted to the Japanese mythology being recorded. The first type of record is Kojiki, which means the records of ancient matters. It focuses on genealogy and the myth. Nihon Shoki, on the other hand, which can be translated to the Chronicles of Japan, adds a great deal to scholarly understanding of both the history and the myth of early Japan. Now, the question is, how did everything come to place according to Japanese mythology? Teacher Rica, take it away.
Today, we will talk about the myth of the creation of Japan. It was when the entire world was covered by a large sea, and the two kami, namely Izanagi and Izanami, brother and sister, thrust their spear into the water and swirled it around. They pulled the spear back up, and some mud dropped down into the water, forming an island. The two kami descended to live on the island. They eventually fell in love and got married. Yes, they are brothers and sisters, but no, they are not Lannisters. They gave birth to 8 children, the 8 main islands of Japan. Then, because birth control was not yet invented, they gave birth to many kami, representing the mountains, valleys, winds, rivers, and other natural features of Japan. However, when Izanami gave birth to the fire kami, she was critically burned and lay dying. As Izanagi knelt there crying, his tears created even more kami, and Izanami also continued to create more until she died and went to the underworld. Izanagi was stricken with grief and traveled to the underworld to get his baby mama back. Izanami greeted him from the shadows and said, "I'll beg the kami of the underworld to release me, but promise you won't look at me." And he said, "Okay." But later, he could not resist and lit a torch to see her face. He saw that his once beautiful wife was now a rotting corpse with maggots and foul creatures on her face. Izanagi ran away from his dead wife because she was ugly. Izanagi reached the land of the living and covered the entrance to the underworld with a big old boulder. His wife screamed from the other side, saying, "I will kill 1,000 people every day if you leave." He yelled back, "Then I will create 1,500 people every day." And that is why the story goes, every day 1,000 people die and 1,500 people are born, and those numbers hold true up to this very day. Back in the land of the living, Izanagi took a bath to purify himself of the dead. More kami emerged from his discarded clothing and his bath. When Izanagi washed his left eye, the kami of the sun was created and was named Amaterasu. When he washed his right eye, the kami of the moon, namely Tsukuyomi, was created. When he washed his nose, the kami of the sea and storms, namely Susanoo, was created. Amaterasu is the most important kami, and it is said that all the Japanese emperors descended from her. And this ends the myth of the creation of Japan.
From the creation myth, we were able to identify some of the gods and goddesses in Japanese mythology. The main deities in Japanese myth conspire Amaterasu, the sun goddess of Japan, the center goddess of Shinto, and the center of Japanese spiritual life. As the mythical ancestors of the Japanese imperial family, she forms the basis of the right to rule. Izanagi. He is one of the first gods of Shinto's cosmology. Together with Izanagi, his female counterpart, he created the islands of Japan and populated them with many kami. Susanoo. He is the Japanese god of the sea and storms. He is a chaotic, stubborn, and a full-hearted soul. He is also the brother of Amaterasu, the rising sun and the queen of the heavens. Next in line is Tsukuyomi, the Japanese moon god. He is a proud deity who represents the beauty and power of the moon. He committed an egregious crime in front of his wife Amaterasu and was forbidden from ever seeing her again. Inari is the kami of prosperity, rice, smithing, cunning, and craftsmanship. He is portrayed variously as male, female, and androgynous. Inari is a complex and popular deity worshipped for more than 1,000 years throughout Japan. Raiji is the Japanese god of storms, a spirit of destruction and chaos who throws lightning and powerful thunderbolts while riding on top of a dark cloud. Amino Ozumi is the Shinto goddess of dawn, an adventure of dances and comedy whose positive self-image and quick thinking helped bring the sun goddess Amaterasu back to the world. Ebisu, the Japanese god of luck and prosperity, is a manifestation of the abundance of the sea. He is always shown with a smile and a laugh. Though he was rejected at birth, Ebisu would go on to become a benevolent, kind kami and one of the 7 lucky gods. Ninigi, on the other hand, introduced rice and civilization to Japan. Then, he founded the Japanese imperial family. He is the grandson of great Amaterasu, the goddess of the heavens and the sun. Since we've already met some of the gods and goddesses in Japanese myth, I think it's now the time to explore their famous folklores. Hair of Inaba. This old Japanese myth is a metaphor of how civilization struggled against barbarism to form the nation of Japan. This legend tells how a hare tricks a crocodile into forming a bridge to enable him to cross to an island. Unfortunately, the crocodile figures out the trick and teams up on the hare and pull off all of his fur. Around the same time, some men who resemble the king's son pass the hare. The hare calls out to them and asks for help. The brothers advise the hare to wash in seawater and dry in the sun. The salt from the seawater makes the hare even more uncomfortable, and the hare lays in the field crying out of pain. Soon after, another brother tells the hare to wash in fresh water and roll in cattails fallen. After the treatment, the hare rewards the brother, who is actually the fairy of Kuni Noshi no Mikoto, by telling him that he will marry Princess Yakami. Kintaro, the superhuman golden boy. A child of superhuman strength, Kintaro was raised by a mountain ogress in Mount Ashigara. He became friendly with the animals of the mountain, and later he became Sakata no Kintoki, a warrior and loyal follower of Minamoto no Yorimitsu. The Japanese legend of Emperor Jimmu. Jimmu, the great-grandson of the goddess Amaterasu, is the mythical founder of Japan and first emperor on traditional lists. Legend says that he was born in 711 BCE and died in 585 BCE, which would mean he was 126 years old at his death. Whoa! There is little evidence that Jimmu ever existed. In fact, modern-day scholars believe that of the 9 emperors, Suizei, Jimmu's successor, was the only one who actually lived. Despite this historical discrepancy, this old Japanese myth is still important as it tells the story of how the imperial family, which still exists today, began. And there you have it, everyone, the famous folklores of Japanese mythology. The beauty and excitement of Japanese mythology get even richer once you learn more about their language and their culture. In fact, many Japanese customs can be traced back to these ancient tales, and the echoes of these legends can be heard in daily conversations. Jibanyan is based on the yokai of Japanese folklore called the Nekomata.
Suddenly, I was a yokai.
Kintoki is based on Sakata Kintoki, who is also known as Kintaro, the golden boy.
Pain's death. We're the only ones who can, right?
Executor is inspired by the Japanese monster of myth called the Jinmenshi. Tora is based on a yokai, but that yokai doesn't share the same name as him. His yokai is called the Raiju, which translates to thunder animal or thunder beast. And Ryo, a shinigami of a Japanese equivalent to what we have in the West called the Grim Reaper.
It was good while it lasted. We eased each other's boredom for quite a while.
And since you're born awesome, I believe that we are now ready for the final test.
Bonk.
As an evaluation, please take note of the following questions. In 100 words, tell us what you learned about Japanese mythology. Number 2. List down at least 2 major deities from Japanese mythology and cite their contribution. In 50 words, tell us about the hare of Inaba. You may write your answers in your journal notebook. As for your assignment, list down at least 5 examples of Japanese myth influence in your locality or city. Japanese mythology is an important medium for transmitting Japanese culture from one generation to the next. It is of fundamental importance in their culture because it is a unique combination of folklore and history that relays the creation of the world and the link between the gods and the Japanese. It also contains elements of religiosity and acts as a manual for human behavior. To end this lesson, let us be reminded of Tom Robbins' words. Logic only gives a man what he needs. Magic gives him what he wants. Good day, everyone, and see you on the next learning session. Sayonara!